He walked into that restaurant just hoping for a little kindness, and walked out carrying something that would flip his entire world upside down. What started as one humiliating night would spark a chain of events no one, least of all her, ever saw coming. Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit subscribe button and like the video and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now, let's jump into the story. The wind off the bay carried the smell of salt and fried seafood through the cracked windows of Ethan Cole's pickup as he parked across from Lorenzo's, the kind of restaurant with flickering fairy lights and linen napkins that seemed allergic to anyone with a grocery store cologne. He caught his own reflection in the side mirror, straightened the collar of the only blazer he owned, and took a breath. Tonight wasn't just a date. It was his first one in 4 years. He glanced at the photo taped to his dashboard. His daughter Lily grinned from a playground swing, her curls flying. "Wish me luck, kiddo," he whispered, and stepped out. Inside, the restaurant hummed with low jazz and muted laughter. Couples leaned close over glowing candles. Ethan found her at a corner table. Madison Winters, all sleek hair and sharper smile, scrolling her phone like the world owed her attention. She barely looked up when he approached. "Ethan, right?" she said, voice flat. "That's me," he replied, easing into the chair. Her gaze flicked to his blazer, then down to his scuffed shoes. "You're a mechanic, yeah?" "Auto tech," he corrected gently. "Own my own small shop." She gave a thin laugh. "So grease and lug nuts. Charming." He forced a smile. "It pays the bills." Madison sipped her wine like it had wronged her. "You mentioned you're a single dad?" "Yeah, Lily's 7. She's my whole world." Madison's brow arched. "Must be hard, dating with baggage." The word hit harder than he expected. Baggage. Like Lily was a broken suitcase. Ethan swallowed it down. "She's not baggage. She's—" Sure, Madison interrupted, setting down her glass. "Just saying, most women don't want to sign up to raise someone else's kid." The waiter appeared, mercifully, to take their order. Madison ordered seared scallops, and Ethan picked the cheapest pasta on the menu, which still cost more than his truck's new battery. The conversation limped. Madison talked about designer handbags, boutique gyms, her ex, who was basically a trust fund with abs. She didn't ask a single thing about Ethan beyond the kind of curiosity one had for a stray cat on the porch. When he mentioned Lily again, how she loved building birdhouses with him, Madison laughed lightly. "That's adorable," she said. "So you're like the dad who builds stuff in the garage while listening to country music? Do you even own a suit?" Ethan chuckled softly. "Not really my scene." "Yeah," she said, and her smile turned pitying. "I figured." The words settled like stones. The check came. Madison didn't reach for it. Ethan paid, his hands steady even as heat crawled up his neck. When they walked outside, the night air was cool and sharp. Madison glanced at her phone. "This was fine," she said, "but I don't think we're a match. I'm looking for someone on my level, you know?" "Right," Ethan said quietly. "Thanks for your hones." She gave a little wave, already tapping on her screen as she walked away, heels clicking on the pavement. Ethan stood under the dim glow of the street lamp, hands in his pockets. The fairy lights behind him blurred. He thought of Lily, asleep in her princess pajamas. The bedtime story half read because he was trying to chase something like happiness again. Instead, he felt small. He drove home with the windows down, letting the wind carry away the taste of her words. The next morning, Ethan was back at his shop by 6, coffee in one hand, wrench in the other. The smell of motor oil and old tires wrapped around him like armor. Lily sat cross-legged on an old office chair, coloring dinosaurs while humming. "How was your date?" she asked without looking up. Ethan smiled faintly. "Not my kind of person." She nodded, serious. That's okay. You're still my favorite person. And just like that, the bruises on his heart eased. A few days later, fate, with its strange sense of humor, brought Lorenzo's back into his orbit. His friend Jake, a real estate agent, swung by the shop, waving a folder. Ever wanted to own a restaurant? Jake grinned. I can barely afford extra fries, Ethan said, wiping his hands. This place is going bankrupt, Jake said. Owner's desperate to sell. Location's gold, though. You could flip it or rent it out. Ethan hesitated, then flipped through the papers. Lorenzo's. The same warm lights, the same linen napkins. The idea rooted quietly. Not revenge, something more stubborn than that. A seed of possibility. He met the owner 2 days later, an older man named Frank, who looked like he'd been carved from tired wood. The business was bleeding money, but the bones were good. Ethan saw it the way he saw a rusted car he knew could purr again with care. He mortgaged the shop, dipped into the small savings meant for Lily's college fund, and signed the papers with hands that trembled. A month later, Lorenzo's reopened. Not fancy, but alive. Ethan kept the lights, the jazz, but swapped the linen for warm wood tables, added a kids' corner with crayons and soft chairs, and renamed it Lily's Table. It wasn't vengeance. It was building something where he had once felt small. Opening night buzzed. Families filled the space with chatter. Lily twirled in a new dress behind the counter, handing out menus. And then the door opened, and Madison walked in. She froze when she saw him behind the host stand. Ethan? He smiled, calm as a settled tide. Welcome to Lily's Table. Her lips parted. You own this? Yeah, he said, meeting her gaze evenly. And no baggage allowed, just people. For once, she had no comeback. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt taller than the ceiling. Madison stood awkwardly by the entrance as a couple slipped past her to a table. Ethan's heart wasn't racing, just steady, rooted. He gestured to a young hostess who guided Madison to a corner booth. He didn't follow. He had customers to greet, orders to double-check, and Lily to keep from handing out cookies like confetti. The night moved like warm wind. Laughter rose from tables. Silverware clinked, and the scent of roasted garlic drifted through the air. Ethan caught flashes of Madison glancing around, eyes tracing the soft lights, the family drawings pinned on the wall, the little chalk-board menu Lily had scrawled with wobbly letters. Halfway through the evening, Ethan brought her a glass of water. I didn't expect to see you here, she said finally. Same, he replied. Life's weird. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Ethan walked away, not unkind. Just done chasing the approval of someone who had measured him by the shine of the shoes. As closing time neared, Madison slipped out. Ethan didn't watch her go. When the last table emptied and the lights dimmed, Ethan locked up while Lily curled asleep in a booth with her stuffed giraffe. He carried her out to the truck, careful not to wake her, the weight of her small frame grounding him. Over the next weeks, Lily's Table grew. Word spread through town about the single dad who turned a dying restaurant into a place that felt like home. Ethan fixed leaky sinks between shifts, learned how to balance invoices at midnight, and still made time to braid Lily's hair each morning. He didn't think about Madison much until a month later when she returned. This time she wasn't dressed in armor. Her makeup was softer, her hair pulled back, eyes uncertain. She waited near the counter as Ethan checked receipts. Can we talk? She asked quietly. Ethan hesitated. Sure. They stepped onto the sidewalk under the soft buzz of the sign. I was awful to you, she said. That night, I was shallow. I judged you before I knew anything. You were honest, Ethan said simply, and I'm not angry. She looked surprised. You're not? No. He paused. Just not interested. Madison nodded slowly. Fair enough. She turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, this place is beautiful. She left, and the night closed around him soft and quiet. After that, she faded from his life. But Lily's table didn't. It grew. Families came on weeknights, couples on anniversaries, tired nurses after late shifts. Ethan hired 3 servers, a dishwasher, and a young chef named Noah, who cooked like he was painting sunsets on plates. One rainy afternoon, a man in a pressed navy suit came in for lunch. He ordered the grilled salmon and asked to speak to the owner. Ethan wiped his hands and walked over. "You're Ethan Cole?" the man said, extending a card. "Jack Reyes. I run a hospitality group downtown. I've been hearing about your place. Would you consider expanding?" The idea hit like lightning, dazzling, terrifying. "I'm just trying to keep this one running," Ethan said with a laugh. Jack smiled. That's how all good stories start. They met for coffee a week later. Jack offered funding, mentorship, and connections. All Ethan had to bring was what he already had: heart, grit, and the refusal to quit. But he didn't say yes right away. That night after Lily fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and quiet dread. He had built this place out of nothing but exhaustion and stubborn hope. Expanding meant risking it all again. He closed his eyes and pictured Lily coloring dinosaurs at the counter. He pictured her future, the one he wanted to give her. The next morning, he called Jack. "I'm in." From there, life tilted forward fast. Plans, meetings, sleepless nights. He spent hours at city offices filing permits, then came back to wipe down tables and read Lily bedtime stories. The second location opened 8 months later in a renovated brick warehouse near the river. Bigger kitchen, brighter space, the same warmth stitched into every corner. On opening day, Lily stood beside him, cutting the ribbon with oversized scissors. Camera flashes popped. Ethan blinked at the crowd, half expecting to wake up in the old shop, surrounded by oil-stained rags. After the ceremony, he found a quiet spot behind the building and breathed. Not pride, something deeper, steadier. Peace. That night, while checking the register, he noticed an envelope tucked under the counter. Inside was a note in looping handwriting. "You were right. People aren't baggage. I hope she knows how lucky she is. Madison." He set it aside without resentment or longing. Just closure. Weeks blurred. 2 restaurants now hummed under his care. Lily's drawings decorated both walls. Customers came not just for food, but for the feeling, that rare mix of comfort and belonging. One evening, Lily fell asleep in his office while he reviewed supplier invoices. He watched her small chest rise and fall, the hum of the restaurant fading behind the glass. This was what he had fought for. Not revenge, not to prove Madison wrong, but to carve out a space in the world where his daughter could see what love looked like when it rolled up its sleeves and worked. He carried her out to the truck, tucked her into her car seat, and stood there for a moment under the glow of the streetlight. He wasn't the man Madison mocked anymore. He was something else entirely. And he wasn't done yet. The rhythm of success came at a cost Ethan had never counted on. Days blurred into nights, and nights into paperwork. The second location thrived, but running 2 restaurants was like holding fire in both hands while trying to hug a child. He was missing things. Small things at first. Forgotten bedtime stories. Cold plates of dinner on the counter. Lily waiting at school pickup while he sped across town through yellow lights. One Friday evening, he arrived late to her school play. He stood at the back, breathless, while Lily scanned the crowd from the stage, dressed as a sunbeam. Her eyes found his just as the curtain fell. She smiled faintly, then looked away. The applause rang hollow in his ears. That night, as she sat on her bed brushing her doll's hair, he knelt beside her. "Sorry I was late." She shrugged without looking up. "It's okay." "No," he said softly. "It's not." Her shoulders sagged. "You work all the time now." The words hit harder than any insult Madison had ever thrown. After she fell asleep, Ethan sat alone on the couch, the house too quiet. He had built these restaurants for her, yet they were pulling him away from the very reason he'd started. The next morning he called Jack. "I can't keep doing this like it's just about growth," Ethan said. "Not if it costs her." Jack was silent for a moment. "Then build it differently. Make the business serve your life, not the other way around." So Ethan did. He promoted Noah to head chef at the riverfront location, gave his managers more authority, and cut his own hours. He still worked hard, but smarter, with boundaries. He picked Lily up from school every day. They made pancakes on Saturday mornings, ate them on the porch, with sticky fingers and big laughs. Balance returned like color to an old photograph. Then, without warning, trouble struck. One rainy night in November, a food critic from a major city magazine visited the original Lily's table. Ethan didn't know she was there until he read her review the next morning. It was brutal. "Warm intentions can't hide disorganized service," it read. "The heart is there, but the execution is floundering." The words spread faster than truth ever could. Bookings dropped within days. Social media swarmed with armchair critics. Ethan walked through the restaurant that Saturday and felt the air sag heavy with tension. His staff avoided his eyes. Lily sat at her coloring table, chin low. That night, after closing, he gathered everyone around the main table. "This place is more than food," he said quietly. "It's where I rebuild my life. But it only works if we care about every plate, every smile, every detail. We're not sinking. We're going to get better." They believed him, not because of grand speeches, but because of confidence. For they believed him, but because he had never lied to them, never blamed, only built. For 2 weeks, they worked like their future was written in steam on the kitchen windows. Ethan trained staff on service flow. Noah revamped the menu with tighter timing, and Lily's table found its heartbeat again. By the end of the month, the tables were full. Laughter returned. The hum of hope rose from every booth like low music. And then came the call. The same critic who had skewered them wanted to return. Ethan didn't panic. He just nodded, set the date, and prepped as if he were rebuilding from ashes. The night came cold and clear. Every table gleamed. Service ran like breath, quiet, constant, unseen. When the critic left, she smiled faintly. Her new review landed 3 days later. "The heart of this place beats stronger than ever. Lily's table has found its soul." Reservations spiked so fast, their online system crashed. Ethan stood in the kitchen, laughter bubbling out of him, not from triumph, but from relief so deep it made him lightheaded. He stepped outside, phone buzzing with congratulations, and called Lily's school. "Can I take her out early?" An hour later, they were on the boardwalk, eating ice cream in the thin winter sun. "You seem happy," Willie said through a mouthful of chocolate. "I am," Ethan said, "because I remembered what matters." She nodded sagely, like she was 90. "Me. You," he said, and meant it more than he'd ever meant anything. Spring came. The restaurant stayed busy, but no longer frantic. Ethan hired more help, invested in staff training, and protected his time with Lily like it was sacred, which it was. Then, one Saturday evening, Madison walked back into Lily's table. She wasn't the same either. Her polished edges had softened. She wore jeans, no jewelry, and an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. "I heard about your second place," she said as he greeted her. "Congratulations." "Thanks," he said. She glanced around, then back at him. "I came to say, I get it now. Why you walked away that night. I used to think strength was about never bending, but maybe it's about knowing what's worth bending for." Ethan studied her for a moment, then smiled gently. "We all learn eventually." She nodded. No bitterness, no regret, just peace. "I hope you keep building good things. That's the plan." She left, and the door swung closed behind her with a soft chime. Ethan stood for a moment, then went back to wiping down the counter. Lily was in the corner, building a castle out of sugar packets and crayons, humming. And for the first time, he saw the arc of it all clearly. How every twist, every wound, every night of doubt had led here. Not revenge, not proving anything, just home. Ethan hesitated. Years ago, he had walked into this building feeling small. Now people wanted him to shape the whole town's future. "Yeah," he said finally, "I'd be honored." He joined, and as the months passed, his role stretched beyond running restaurants. He organized local hiring fairs, started a mentorship program for at-risk teens, and sponsored free family meals every Sunday night. He didn't tell anyone why he did it, but it was simple. He remembered what it felt like to be invisible. He wanted fewer people to feel that way. By the end of the year, Lily's table had become more than a restaurant. It was part of the town's heartbeat. One evening, just after closing, Ethan sat alone in the dining room while the staff cleaned up. The lights were low, the air warm with the last traces of garlic and cinnamon. Lily dozed on a booth bench with her stuffed giraffe tucked under her chin. Ethan looked around at the walls covered with framed drawings from local kids, the worn floor polished by hundreds of small feet, the photo of Lily, smiling taped beside the register. He thought about that night with Madison, how her words had pierced through him like cold wind. He thought about how he had left, feeling smaller than he had in years. And now here he was, sitting inside the place he had rebuilt from the ground up, not to prove her wrong, not to chase revenge, but to give his daughter a world where kindness could be louder than judgment. His phone buzzed. It was Jack. "Just checking in," Jack said. "Heard you won the Community Impact Award." "Yeah," Ethan said softly. "Funny how life works." "Not funny," Jack replied. "Deserved." After they hung up, Ethan closed his eyes for a moment and listened. Laughter echoed faintly from the kitchen as the staff wrapped up the night. Lily shifted in her sleep and sighed contentedly. This was the real win. Weeks later, the Boardwalk project launched. Food trucks, street performers, fairy lights strung like constellations. Ethan opened a small third spot there, a simple walk-up counter serving family recipes passed down from his grandmother. He named it Little Lily's. On opening night, Lily stood on a milk crate and handed out the first cones of frozen custard. People cheered, music played, and Ethan stood back, hands in his pockets, watching the life he had once thought was impossible bloom in front of him like it had been waiting all along. He didn't wear a suit. He didn't need one. Late that night, after the crowd had thinned, Lily tugged on his sleeve. "You happy, Dad?" He knelt to her level, the boardwalk lights flickering on her cheeks. "More than I ever thought I could be." She grinned. "Good, because I think you're kind of awesome." He laughed, scooped her up, and spun her in the salty breeze. They walked home under the glow of the Ferris wheel, Lily asleep on his shoulder. Years from now, people would tell the story of the single dad who once got mocked on a date and ended up shaping their town. They would talk about how he built something that fed more than just stomachs. But Ethan didn't care about legacy. He cared about walking through his door at night, about bedtime stories and mismatched socks, and laughter echoing through rooms that had once felt too quiet. Because success, he realized, wasn't the size of the building or the weight of the bank account. It was this: building a life so full of love that no cruel word could shrink it again. And in that quiet moment on the boardwalk, the man who had once been dismissed as baggage carried the world in his arms, and it was light. In a world quick to judge by appearances, remember this: kindness builds longer bridges than pride ever could. Never measure someone's worth by what they have. Measure it by what they give, even when they have little. Because when we choose compassion over comparison, we don't just change one life, we change the world around it. So from one man's heartbreak grew a place that fed not just people, but hope, and proved that dignity can rise from the very moments meant to break us. If this story moved you, imagine what we can build when we choose compassion over judgment. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it to remind someone that second chances can change the world.